A storm was coming. Her shelter wouldn't hold. He had to decide. The prairie looked like it had been scraped raw by God's thumbnail. Late afternoon light poured over it anyway. Gold on grass, gold on river, gold on the long, slow bend of water, cutting through emptiness like an old scar that refused to heal. Wind moved across the plains with the patient indifference of a thing that had outlived everyone who ever tried to tame it. On the north rise, a man sat his horse and did not move. His name was Wade Holloway, and the land knew him the way a trail knows boots. Same route, same hour, same silence. For 3 years now, he rode this ridge line above the river and counted cattle like a man reciting prayers he no longer believed in. He was built out of fence posts and stubbornness, broad shoulders, dust-worked coat, hat brim cracked from weather and neglect. He held the reins loose, like the horse was doing the thinking for both of them. For a while, it was just horse and man facing the wide-open nothing. Then something moved down by the bend. Wade lifted a hand, shading his eyes. A figure. Small. Human. Working. No wagon. No proper camp. No smoke column rising from a settled outfit. Just one person near the waterline, where the grass flattened and the bank dipped, hammering at something that could only loosely be called a shelter. He watched, still as a fence post, while the figure raised an arm and brought the hammer down again and again, like she was trying to punish the world into cooperating. The sound carried, sharp cracks snapping across distance. Then the wood split under a blow. The figure stumbled back, caught herself, paused. A hand went to her face for half a second, like someone pinching the bridge of their nose to keep from falling apart, and then she reached for another board. Wade's jaw tightened. He recognized that kind of refusal to quit. It wasn't hope. It wasn't optimism. It was the colder thing underneath both. The decision not to die today, even if tomorrow came hungry. Before we move closer, before the wind changes and the weather shows its teeth, if you like Western stories that feel lived in, hit like and subscribe. These aren't cowboy fantasies. They're stories about survival and the price it demands. Wade didn't know her name yet, but he already knew the truth. That shelter wasn't going to hold. One, the woman at the river. Down by the creek bend, the woman fought with wood like it had personally offended her. Mid-20s, maybe younger. Hard to tell beneath sunburn and exhaustion. Her dress wasn't built for the season. Thin and patched, frayed at the hem like it had been argued back together more than sewn. Her boots were worn through at the heel, and the prairie bit her feet every time she stepped wrong. She had gathered scraps, warped planks, split rails, crate boards scavenged from somewhere long abandoned, nails already bent, grain already rotted. She stacked them into something that pretended to be walls. She was doing the right things in the wrong way. Wade saw it with a rancher's eye, the way a man can look at a fence and know which post will fail first. Her fire pit was placed smart, stones arranged to break the wind. She'd chosen ground near water but above floodline. Prairie grass gathered for bedding, kept dry under a strip of salvaged canvas. Resourceful. But the structure itself was a prayer, made out of rotten lumber. The sky to the northwest looked swollen, Clouds stacked like bruises, heavy and gray, the color of dirty wool. Wade could smell the coming weather, the way old dogs smelled sickness. 2 days, maybe 3. Then the prairie would stop pretending it was friendly. Wind gusted suddenly, testing her work. The boards rattled, shaking like teeth. The whole thing held together by bent nails and the belief that the world owed her a chance. She braced one wall with her shoulder while hammering another board into place. Wade shifted in the saddle. Leather creaked. A man was supposed to mind his own business out here. That was the rule, especially when the business involved a lone woman, a lonely ranch, and a town full of eyes that could ruin a man faster than drought killed cattle. Reputation was currency. Whispers traveled quicker than storms. Wade Holloway had lived by that rule for years. Keep to yourself. Keep the ranch running. Let the dead stay dead. 3 years ago, his wife Mara died of a fever that came quiet and left loud. 1 week she was laughing at the kitchen table. The next, the house felt abandoned, like someone had fled in the night and never returned. After Mara, Wade didn't exactly choose silence. Silence just moved in and acted like it owned the place. He rode this ridge every day since her death. The cattle learned his routine. The hands learned not to ask questions that required feelings. Now a woman had appeared near the river, building hope out of scraps, and Wade could already see where that would lead. Another board split. The sound cracked across the prairie. The woman froze, looked at her hands. Wade waited for tears. They didn't come. What came instead was worse. That hollow stillness people get when they realize effort alone doesn't make something possible. Then she bent down and picked up the board anyway. Wade's throat tightened. That wasn't pride. That was survival, clinging to a thread. Dusk crept in, turning the prairie blue. The woman finally stopped, shoulders sagging, and huddled close to her weak fire. From the ridge, Wade could see daylight through gaps in her walls. Wind would pour through like water through a sieve. Wade turned his horse toward home, but the image followed him, like a burr under skin. A woman building a life with broken boards, the same way he'd been doing for 3 years, only she didn't have 3 years. She had days. 2. The rules men live by Wade slept poorly. Sleep had become a town he didn't trust. When he did manage it, he dreamed of Mara's hands, warm, capable, making bread, tying bandages, fixing what needed fixing without asking permission. In the dream, she always looked at him like she knew he was still alive and was offended he acted otherwise. Morning came silver with frost. Wade rode back to the ridge before the sun properly woke, as if this were still just routine. The woman was already up. She'd made coffee over her fire. The smell carried faint, but unmistakable. Burnt beans and stubbornness. Her hands shook as she lifted the tin cup. Then she set it down and picked up the hammer again. Bandages wrapped her palms, strips torn from cloth that used to belong to her dress. Wade watched her work. Each board she added made the structure worse. The geometry was wrong. The foundation crooked. The nails old and bent. She was building failure, one blow at a time. And still, she did not stop. Something shifted in Wade's chest. A door, long nailed shut, creaked open. Mara had been like that. Their first year married. Drought hit hard. Water ran thin. Cattle started dropping, like they were ashamed to keep breathing. Mara never complained, never suggested leaving. She rationed what they had and kept her chin level, daring the world to do its worst. They survived. Together. Now Wade sat the ridge and watched a stranger fight winter with scraps. Wind picked up stronger than yesterday. The woman looked up, fear flashing across her face. She braced against the shelter's corner post as the gust hit. The weakest wall collapsed. Boards clattered down. Nails pulled free from wood, too rotted to deserve the name lumber. The woman staggered, sat hard in the dirt, and stared at her hands. No crying, no screaming. Just the quiet disbelief of someone learning that courage doesn't come with structural integrity. That silence, more than tears, broke through Wade's hesitation. He nudged his horse forward, then stopped. Riding down there now solved nothing. He had no lumber, no tools, no plan. Just good intentions. And the frontier buried good intentions in shallow graves, alongside good people. He turned toward home. But the decision had already begun forming, like ice on water. Some things a man couldn't watch from a distance, and still call himself decent. Some things demanded action, even if it dragged every town rumor behind it, like tin cans on a wedding wagon. Wade touched his heels to the horse's flanks and rode hard for the ranch. Behind him, the woman gathered fallen boards and tried again. Determination was going to kill her unless something stronger arrived first. 3. Good timber, waiting for a purpose. The barn smelled like hay, leather, and old seasons stacked on top of each other. Wade stood in the half-light, staring at a stack of pine boards leaned neatly against the wall. He'd bought them 4 years ago, back when Mara was alive, back when plans felt normal. They'd been meant for a porch rebuild, wider, stronger. Mara wanted rockers, a place to watch sunset without feeling like the world was rushing them. Then the fever came. Plans turned into relics. Wade ran a hand along the top board. Straight, smooth, solid. Good timber, waiting for permission. You hauling off the good stuff? That was Elias Crowder, his foreman. 60 years old and built like an oak stump. Elias had kept the ranch breathing when Wade had stopped doing much more than existing. Good timber deserves a good use, Wade said. Elias stepped closer, barn light carving the years into his face. About damn time. Wade loaded the pack mule methodically. Boards, nails, a proper hammer, his good saw, rope, clean cloth strips, a tin of salve Mara used to make for rope burns. Each item felt like a commitment. From the bunkhouse porch, the hands watched without comment. A young one tipped his hat. An older one smiled and went back to coffee. They understood without saying it. The boss was choosing to care about something beyond routine. Stars punched holes in the dark sky as Wade finished loading. The temperature dropped further. Northwest clouds crept closer. You need company? Elias asked. Wade shook his head. No. Elias nodded, then asked quietly. She got a name? Don't know yet. But you know she needs help. Wade tied the last knot. That's enough. He swung into the saddle. Elias stopped him with a hand on the horn. Mara would have done the same. Wade swallowed and nodded once. then do it in a way that'd make her proud. Wade rode out under a spill of stars, the pack mule following, burdened with the weight of a decision. He didn't pray often, but he did now. Not for himself. For timing. For the chance to arrive before the prairie finished what it always threatened. 4. The first words. Dawn broke pale and cold. Frost turned the grass into needles. Wade saw the shelter site immediately, because it looked like despair wearing a wooden costume. The woman lay near her fire, wrapped in a blanket too thin to matter. The structure leaned like a drunk trying to stand. Wade slowed. He didn't want to startle her. Didn't want to be the kind of man who used surprise as advantage. But the creak murmured and covered hoofbeats. She jolted awake anyway, eyes wide, fear sharp. She scrambled upright, clutching the blanket like it could stop bullets. Wade stayed mounted at a distance, silhouette against the rising sun. He didn't reach for his gun. He didn't move closer. He waited. "Ma'am," he said finally. "Didn't mean to scare you." She didn't answer. Studied him like kindness sometimes wore a costume. Wade dismounted slowly, stood beside his horse, hands visible. "My name's Wade Holloway. Ranch is 3 miles west." Her jaw tightened. "Why are you here?" Wade looked at the shelter, then the bruised sky. "Because that storm's coming, and that won't hold." He untied the boards, her eyes locked onto the lumber like it was food. "You bringin' me a coffin?" she asked, voice dry with exhaustion. Wade almost smiled. "Bringin' you a chance. I don't have money." Didn't ask. Wade met her eyes. "2 choices. Let me help build it right, or freeze when the storm hits." She flinched. Her hands were wrapped in blood-stained cloth. Her shoulders sagged, but her chin stayed level. "All right," she said quietly. "Help me." Wade nodded once. Then he started pulling down what remained of her shelter, without comment. No pity. No lecture. Just work. And that, more than anything, made her shoulders loosen. Because pity was its own kind of cruelty. Work was honest. 5. Building something that holds Wade sorted lumber with a practiced eye, tossing what couldn't be saved. The woman hovered close, watching. "You got a name?" Wade asked. She hesitated. "Lark Morgan." It fit like a scar. Wade handed her his good hammer. "You can use it?" She snorted. "I've been using one for days." "Then use it smarter." They started with the foundation. Wade showed her how to level the base with stone and packed earth, how to brace corners, how to angle supports so wind traveled down into ground instead of tearing nails free. Lark absorbed everything. When a cut didn't fit, she adjusted instead of forcing it. By mid-morning, walls stood true. The roof came last. Clouds crawled closer. Wade worked faster. His back protested. Lark noticed. "You're favoring your right side." "I'm fine." "That means it hurts." Wade drove a nail clean. "Hold that board." She did. By dusk, the shelter stood solid. Lark stepped inside and just stood there. "It's real," she whispered. It'll keep you alive, Wade said. That's enough. He gathered tools, then paused. This solves tonight, not winter. Lark's jaw set. My ranch needs help, Wade said. Honest work, fair pay, bunkhouse room with a stove. Thunder rumbled far off. Lark looked at the shelter, at her hands, at the sky. I accept, she said. Relief crossed Wade's face. Rest, he said. I'll come back at dawn. He rode away as darkness fell, leaving behind good timber and a structure that held. Lark lay down warm for the first time in weeks, and let herself believe tomorrow might be more than survival. 6. A ranch that functioned, not lived. Wade returned at dawn as promised. Lark had packed everything she owned into a canvas sack. 2 dresses, a worn shawl, the tin cup, the blanket. Everything fit. That fact stayed with her longer than she liked. The ride to the ranch took an hour. Prairie rolled out on either side, wide and indifferent, the river falling away behind them like something already finished. The ranch appeared gradually. Barn first, then bunkhouse, then the main house. Straight fences, healthy cattle, a place that worked, but it felt hollow, like a body that breathed without remembering why. Wade showed her the spare bunkhouse room. Narrow bed, small stove, east-facing window. It ain't fancy, he said. It's warm, Lark replied. That's enough. The days settled into rhythm quickly. Lark rose before dawn, cooked for the hands, learned where supplies were kept and which cupboard stuck. She worked without asking to be told what came next, and the men noticed without commenting. Trust out here was earned quietly. On the 3rd day, she reorganized the pantry. Not because anyone asked, because disorder felt dangerous. When Wade came in for supper and stopped short at the sight of it, Lark's stomach tightened. If that ain't all right, it is, Wade said too fast. Then quieter, like the name cost him something. Mara tried to do that for years. Never had time. Lark nodded and didn't ask questions. Everyone carried ghosts. Digging at them didn't help. That night, they sat at the kitchen table after the hands drifted out, coffee between them, wind beginning to worry at the windows. You don't have to work like you're being chased, Wade said. Lark stared into her cup. I've been chased. Wade nodded once. He didn't ask by what. The way you built with those broken boards, he said. That took something. Desperation, Lark replied. Desperation don't make people keep going after the wall falls, Wade said. Most folks quit and call it fate. I didn't have quit available. Wade studied her like he was learning to speak to the living again. That ranch, he said, gesturing vaguely. It's been running, but it ain't been alive. Lark understood the shape of that sentence too well. Outside, the storm arrived proper, wind howling. Snow throwing itself at the windows. Inside, warmth held. 2 people sat quiet with their ruins, and neither said it aloud, but both felt it. Something had shifted. Not romance, not yet. Just the first board set straight. Suaven. When the town notices. 2 weeks later, Wade needed supplies and had to see the bank. The town was small. 1 street. Buildings weathered gray. A church that stood like it enjoyed correction. People noticed immediately when Wade arrived with a woman beside him. They always did. Wade helped Lark down from the wagon. Polite, proper. No room for interpretation. Interpretation came anyway. Inside the mercantile, Lark gathered flour, sugar, coffee, beans. The shopkeeper watched her too closely. "You're the girl staying at Holloway Ranch?" "Yes, ma'am. I work there." "And where do you sleep?" "The bunkhouse spare room." A pause, then a thin smile. Convenient. Lark finished her purchases without explaining herself. Outside, voices carried near the church steps. "Living at his place. Poor dead wife. You know what she is." The words struck like thrown stones. Lark froze, groceries heavy in her arms. The women noticed her and turned away, judgment intact. By the time Wade returned from the bank, Lark was sitting rigid in the wagon. They rode out of town in silence. "I'm leaving," Lark said finally. Wade didn't pretend not to hear. "What happened?" "The talk," she said. "The looks. They think I'm something I'm not, and it's hurting you." Wade pulled the wagon to a stop. "You think I care what they think?" he asked. "I do," Lark said quietly. "I won't cost you your ranch." Wade turned to face her fully. "3 weeks ago, I watched you bleed over rotten boards," he said. "You didn't beg. You didn't cry for show. You worked. That ain't shameful." "The banker said something," she pressed. Wade nodded. "He did. And I told him my business is mine." Lark shook her head. "What if he calls the loan? Then we figure it out." He paused, then added softer, heavier. "Together." The word landed between them like a plank set across open ground. That night, wind battered the ranch buildings. Lark packed anyway. Leaving before dawn felt easier than staying and being the reason a good man lost everything. She was halfway through folding her dress when the door opened. Elias stood there holding a lantern. "You don't run," he said, not unkindly. "You stand, or you let Wade stand alone. This ain't his fight." Elias shook his head. 3 years I watched that man go dead inside. Then you showed up, and something woke up. You leave now. You kill it." He turned to go. "Woman brave enough to build with broken boards," he said. "Ought to be brave enough to stay." Lark unpacked. 8. Drawing a line. Wade went to town the next morning alone. He didn't argue, didn't threaten, didn't posture. At the bank, he spoke plainly about honest work and decent people. At the church, he asked where mercy had been when someone was freezing by the river. He didn't demand approval. He made his position visible. Some people looked away. Some nodded. A few remembered what frontier life actually required. Wade rode home under a pale afternoon sun, unsure whether he'd won or simply refused to lose quietly. Lark was waiting by the corral. "How'd it go?" Said what needed saying. She studied his face. And if they don't like it," Wade said, "they can get used to it." She smiled then, small, real. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For not asking me to disappear." 9. Spring doesn't ask permission. Winter loosened slowly. By April, green returned to the prairie like a promise that hadn't quite decided whether to keep itself. Lark planted a garden behind the bunkhouse. Hands calloused now, movements confident. The ranch changed, not in dramatic ways, but in the quiet ones that mattered. The kitchen ran smooth. Supplies stayed accounted for. The men laughed more. Wade changed, too. Mara's memory didn't fade. It settled. Stopped cutting him every time he moved. Town softened, grudgingly. Not everyone welcomed Lark, but some did. A jar of preserves left quietly on the porch, a tipped hat, a nod where there'd been none before. One evening, Wade found Lark standing near the old shelter site by the river. It still stood, weathered, but solid. "I think about that day," Lark said. "About how hard I tried to make those boards hold." "You did what you could," Wade replied. "That matters." "You showed me what good timber changes," she said. "Not just in building." Wade stared at the shelter, then at her. "You reminded me life keeps going," he said. "That it's meant to be lived, not just managed." They stood in silence, sun dropping low, river catching fire. Wade cleared his throat. "I'm bad at saying things," he said. "I noticed." He huffed once, then sobered. "I don't want you here out of gratitude," Wade said, "or obligation. I don't want to be another place you stay because you're afraid to leave." Lark's heart tightened. "I want you here," he continued, "because you choose it. Because you want to build something with me." She turned to face him fully. "You're asking careful," she said. "I have to." Lark considered the prairie, the ranch, the shelter that had almost been her grave. Then she reached out and took his hand. Not tentative, not rushed, deliberate. "I choose it," she said. "And I choose you, if you're willing to try." Wade's breath left him slow. "I am," he said. "I don't promise easy. I don't trust easy." Their hands stayed linked. That was enough. 10. Good timber. They didn't rush it. They didn't name it too loudly. But the ranch felt different after that. Lighter, steadier. The porch got rebuilt, board by board, wider than before. 2 rockers appeared. Some evenings they sat there without talking, watching sunset like it was something earned. The prairie still stretched wide. Storms still came. But the walls were braced. The foundation was true. And 2 people who once tried to survive with broken boards were building something that could last, together.